Social Security gave retirees a 2.8% cost of living increase this year. But then Medicare Part B premiums jumped nearly 10%, and inflation kept running above 3%. And a lot of retirees are looking at their bank account and wondering, where did that raise go? Today, we're going to walk you through exactly what has changed, what it means for your check, and the strategies that put the most money in your pocket. I'm sure you'll like that.
Welcome to Leibel on Fire with Amazon best-selling author and Yields for You portfolio manager, Leibel Sternbach. Leibel on Fire is supported by our ETFs, Yields for You Strategy A and Relative Strength Managed Volatility. Our mission is to help 1 million people retire with financial security. Now, the Financial Independence and Retirement Show dedicated to helping you build the life of your dreams as fast as possible with as little stress as possible. It's Leibel on Fire.
Hello again and welcome to Leibel on Fire. I'm Freddie Bell, and with me is Amazon's best-selling author of 2 books, Authenticity and Living with Financial Anxiety, and talking about Social Security in 2026 and the changes that could mess up your check. Leibel, there's a lot of anxiety right now. Let's start here with Social Security. As I mentioned in the open, we got a 2.8% raise this year. But between the Medicare premium hike, I should say, and rising costs, how much of this actually ended up in our retirees' pocket? And I'm going to wager here, and I'm not a bettor, I'm going to say none of it.
Well, yes, I think when you look at inflation, for the most part, I think retirees are actually behind, quite a bit behind. You look at Social Security and you go, okay, well, it's great. And it keeps up with inflation in theory. One, they don't use the same inflation number that we actually experience, right? We know that it excludes a whole lot of volatile stuff. But number 2 is that it's a year behind, right? So you already outlaid all the expenses of that inflation before Social Security catches up and increases your check. So yeah, 2.8% great, but we know inflation is running hot. We also know that inflation, when it comes to the things that retirees experience, is significantly higher. And we still have things, right? I mean, like, I don't know, good luck leasing a car at the numbers that they used to be, right? Like, it's crazy, right? To think about, like, there was a time where I wouldn't, I thought $300 a month lease was like, really extravagant. And now it's like, I'm lucky if I can find something, that's even remotely affordable. Long story short, yeah, there is, inflation and Social Security keeping up with it, and never keeps up with it. And we really got to be worried about it.
Tell us about the rule that was changed that impacts Social Security, the rule in 2026, and it impacts how much we're getting. What took place? What happened while we weren't watching?
Yeah, so one of those really nice things that got passed that I was really happy about, but it wasn't really applauded. We didn't even talk about it on the show when it happened. Was that one of the things that Congress quietly passed was that people who are receiving government pensions, so prior to this rule, for the longest time, their Social Security was decreased by the amount that they were receiving from the government pension. And they just quietly changed the rules and said that's no longer the case. I mean, something to the tune of, I think the number I saw was $17 billion has already been paid out to beneficiaries who were previously subject to this, right? So Social Security has actually been going back and retroactively sending people this money based on this rule, which is phenomenal. But if you are somebody who your Social Security check was a fraction of what it should have been because you were covered by a government pension, whether it was because it was on your own money or it was because you were a widow or widower, and receiving a government pension that way, and you were subject to, GOP or WEP, go check out if your check has increased them, and it hasn't. Call up the Social Security Administration and find out if you can get more, because that is something that, I mean, it's huge. It's huge for a whole large number of beneficiaries. especially those who have given the most to the public, right? A lot of the people on this are, they're teachers and firemen and policemen and, other government employees who have dedicated their life to us.
Talk about a person who's 62 and they're thinking about claiming their benefits early. But with the trust fund running out by 2032, should they grab it right now, or is waiting until they're 70, another 8 years, worth it? Walk us through the real math if you don't mind.
Yeah, so this is a really tough one, right? Social Security is a trust, and they've got this trust fund where all the money that we pay into Social Security and taxes gets put into this trust fund, right? And in theory, it's supposed to be invested. Except sometime, I think it was in the 90s, the early 90s, they passed a law and Congress needed money for some war. And the way that they were going to raise that money was they said that the trust fund can only invest in government issued securities, i.e. treasuries or government agency securities like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and things like that. Which essentially meant that the government now was able to, rob the piggy bank without robbing the piggy bank. It's you can invest it, right? You got to invest the money. We're not touching your Social Security money, but you got to loan it to us, okay? And we're going to pay you like whatever the going rate is. So the Social Security Trust Fund hasn't grown the way it really needs to. It's also a legalized Ponzi scheme, right? It is very much based on the fact that we need more people working and paying into the system than we're paying out. Because if we're paying out more people than we're putting in, then it runs negative, right? And we run out of money, right? And if we're running out of money, then, just like any other good Ponzi scheme, the only choice is either don't pay out your investors or get new suckers in, right? Those are your only choices. Well, the government, and this, by the way, it has a lot to do with with the immigration question, right? A lot of what immigration is based on and a lot of what the fight is based on, at least with the people who really understand what's going on. It has to do with we don't have enough of a labor force for our lower earners, wage earners. And number two, we need more beneficiaries. We need more workers paying into the system because we are at the point right now where we have more retirees than we have workers. Right. And that is not sustainable because at some point it's going to become like what happened with Greece, where Greece had to raise their retirement age and they had to reduce the amount of benefits they were paying out. And it nearly cost a civil war over there. So Congress has been trying to get ahead of it for like the last 15 years. They have done that by the deemed filing rule, which if any of you have been on any of my Social Security webinars know that I'll talk for 20 minutes about how much I hate it. But essentially it was, nobody understood what it was at the time because it didn't affect current beneficiaries, only affected new beneficiaries. And, it's so complicated that like who understands it, who's looking into it. But effectively, they cut their Social Security check by about 30%. That was they stopped having to pay out benefits. So anyways, long story short, what happens is the trust fund, right, runs out of money, right? It's projected to run out of money by, I think it's 2031. The year keeps changing. What happens if we don't figure out a solution by the time the trust fund runs out of money? Right now, the trust fund is supplementing the income, right? So we're paying out, let's call it $1,000 in benefits, but we're only bringing in $700 in premium. Well, the trust fund is making up the difference, right? Just like a good Ponzi scheme, right? It's coming out of Bernie Madoff's pocket. But what happens when his pockets run dry? Well, he can't pay it out, right? It collapses, right? Now, because it's the federal government we're talking about, right? It's not going to collapse, right? They're going to just say, well, we're paying less in benefits. But between me and you, we know that's not really tenable, right? Because the retirees make up the largest voting bloc right now. And if they suddenly said to people, right, that you're getting less in benefits, well, there's going to be a change in administration very quickly to the people who say they can give it. Fortunately, that's not really sustainable in the long term because that's what happened to Venezuela, right? Venezuela is paying out benefits based on their oil revenue, and they were giving out more than they could. The government that was saying that we have to cut back benefits, they got kicked out and got replaced with a communist who said we're gonna pay out, as much benefits as possible because it is for the public, right? It is our stuff, right? Well, guess what? He's sitting in a prison in Brooklyn, waiting trial because the government, essentially collapsed because there wasn't enough money to pay out benefits. It lasted for 10 years, and then it went to hell. So.
Everybody, we're talking with Leibel Sternbach, and you're really scaring the heck out of me today. So here's a scenario. Assume my wife and I are trying to put together the best strategy that we can. Is there a combination, Leibel, where one of us can claim early and then the other one waits, that actually puts more money in our pocket over a lifetime? Is that a broken idea, or can that actually work?
So that not only can that work, but that is often what I end up recommending to people. So the strategy used to be you do file and suspend, where one spouse would take as early as possible, and then the other would file, but then suspend their benefits, and you would delay it until age 70, right? And then you get one big check, and then you get a smaller check, for most of your 60s, and you're good, right? It was a great deal. Congress, because of a deemed rule, put an end to that. They were like, no, we're gonna make it so that you both have to be receiving checks in order for one of you to get a check. The deemed filing rule put an end to some of that, but you can still do one spouse takes it early and then the other one delays. Now, the question really becomes, you got to figure out, okay, how much is the spousal boost, right? How much am I leaving on the table by not both of us filing at the same time? And you got to work out the math and figure it out. And then you got to figure out, is, getting a bigger check while I'm alive more important, or is it making sure that when one of us passes, right, that the surviving spouse has enough money? Because there is going to be a shortfall, right? When one spouse passes, you're going to just receive the greater Social Security check. And for some people, that's a very stark difference, right? Like if one person was a stay-at-home mom and the other person was working all day, right, and they had the career, well, their check might be $4,000 a month if they delayed to, age 70, but the other spouse, maybe they don't have a check, or their check is only 50% of their spousal benefit, or maybe it's, something like $1,200 or $1,300. And so you really got to time those together, and you got to look at it from, and then you got to look at it from the context of, will getting that money earlier help us deplete our savings, make our savings last longer so that it grows more and it's there for us when we really need it, if the Social Security Trust Fund depletes and benefits do get cut, because that's really the only way to happen, or the only outcome of that scenario. And so you gotta really plan that out.
So I'm gleaning from this that Social Security, the fund is going to run out 2031, 2032. So realistically, what's going to happen to a retiree's check if Congress does nothing? And if they do nothing, what should we be doing right now to prepare for that, if anything?
So if nothing changes, meaning we don't get any more workers in the system, and we're talking about millions, right? We don't get millions of new workers in the system, or tens of millions of new workers in the system, which is what immigration is really about, is getting those new workers. So if we don't get more in the system for that, which Social Security, one of the changes they made was the wage cap used to be like $130,000 a year. Now it's almost $184,000. So they're getting more money in the system that way, right? So assuming that doesn't increase, assuming that they don't figure out more ways to fuck over beneficiaries and cut the amount that they're paying out to new beneficiaries, and assuming that Congress doesn't figure out a way to repay the piggy bank that they've, raided in the form of forcing them to only invest in themselves, assuming those three things aren't true, that nothing changes, then yeah, we have a problem, and and you should plan for reduced cuts. Realistically speaking, I don't think that's going to happen. This has been a scare that has happened repeatedly over and over and over again. Both parties know that if benefits to Social Security are cut for current beneficiaries, they are effectively ensuring that they'll never get reelected. And we all know that the number one job of every politician is to get reelected. So I don't think it's going to be the Social Security checks are the thing that are going to get cut. I think the thing that's going to get cut is new beneficiaries may not be able to get as much benefit. So if you are planning that in 5 years or 6 years from now, that your Social Security check is going to be X, it might not be, right? And we gotta plan for that. Things also like inflation adjustments. I very vividly remember there was, I don't even know what it was, but I was a kid and there was an inflation adjustment made to Social Security, and there were a bunch of beneficiaries who they were people who were living on Social Security. They were living on, welfare, and their checks got cut in half. And they were talking about that they had to move. They couldn't pay their rent. They couldn't afford food. And I remember this as, I was like 8 or 10 years old of hearing these conversations, right? So Social Security has done this before. The government has done this before. And it was I'm pretty sure it was, there was a Democrat in office at the time, right? These things happen. You gotta plan for the worst case and hope for the best.
There you go. We got to leave it right there, Leibel, unfortunately. But if you like more information, go to yields4u.com. That's yields, the number 4, the letter U.com. Your Social Security check is a planning tool, and how you use it determines whether it carries you through retirement or if it leaves you short. And if the trust fund worries you, let that be a motivational source to get your own act together so that you don't have to depend on Congress getting its act together. Your Social Security is one leg of that three-legged stool. Making sure the other legs are solid are up to you.
If you would like to see how the Yields for You team can help you get off the Wall Street roller coaster and save you money on taxes so you can live the life of your dreams, book an appointment online at yields4u.com or call 410-914-4894.
Yields for You is a registered investment advisor in the state of New York and only transacts business in states where the firm is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement. Information presented on this program is believed to be factual and up to date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Discussion should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell or solicitation of any offer to buy or sell the investments mentioned. Annuity guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. Content should not be viewed as legal or tax advice. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation.